Hello and welcome. It's the 20th day of December 2018, and let's take a look at some altcoins, alt bets, trades of the like within one's own risk and within, of course, their own reward. For myself, risk reward management, always job number one. And what's interesting about the technical analysis is you have situations like, oh, let's wait for a break above this resistance. Which happened? Did anyone get stopped out here? Because it went a little bit lower than some may have liked. However, it's back to where it came from, leaving the 18 average and, well, probably ready for a decent size move lower. And having these situations where, oh my goodness, it's breaking down by the 18, I gotta get it at 420. That's not my style, which is why I rarely play those types of games where, okay, I'm going to sell it at a loss at this level. Rather, of course, I look to buy when it goes down, sell when it goes back up. And I got it back into MUE on the 10th day of December. And I'll show you the short term in just a little bit. But before we do that, on the weekly term, when this thing's ready to go, there can be some spectacular moves along the way. I mean, it's just a small bit just to get to 18, 1900, and that's almost a 4x move as it is. At least looking at comparison to some of the previous rallies it had, like the one back at the end of last year. And then, of course, this one here having spectacular moves. Okay, now let's take a look at this on a shorter term time frame. I think 1 hour's, although 1 hour, yeah, too short for my liking. So again, I got in on December the 10th. Let's take a look at some statistics. And I got in at 552, which would have meant buying as it was breaking out in here. And it lost, so I could have stopped it below here, but no. Rather, the price went down to 476 and 422. And I bought some more. So 476 would have been going down in here, and then 422 would have been hitting this low in here. So those are the buys along the way. Now mathematically, when I show the stats on the right hand side, that means on the trade after the first buy I was down 14%, and if you just didn't do anything you'd be down a little less. I was down about 25% when it went down to 422. But then it rallied all the way up to 499, and that was a differential of 77 basis points, which was close to 20%. These were really small buys in here, but when the market went up to 499, where did it go to? It was this high here. So obviously it could have been better. I could have sold, and then I was looking at that and I was thinking, man, why am I playing? I mean, I could have had a much higher sell order, I was thinking as well too. So be it. And then after that, the market only went down to like 460, so there's no buying. If I would have sold up here, then I probably would have been able, and I definitely would have been most likely had that buy back in here. But if not, then what's the next trade? Well, it was a sell, and it was a sell at 590. And that made the portfolio go up to the point where price is barely above where it was on the entry point at 552, yet I'm up 18%, and the market's up 6.64%, which is really not really hodl as well, but it's just what the market's up or down since the 552. And of course, this was down rake at the 0.23%. And selling at 590, but at that point, why I chose that number was because there was a big bunch of sell orders near 600. And as we can see, it pretty much was near the top. And then when we take a look at this now on the single hour time frame, this little move here, I mean, thank you. That's really how I look at it as, and these are the types of moves that I like. The low was 500. There was a big buy order at 500 and even a decent size one at 501, which is why I decided, well, that's going to put my buy order at 502. When I bought there, at the completion of the buy, my portfolio on MUE, just over these few trades alone, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was a 6th trade, up 2.08%, market down 9.26%. I haven't traded since, but it's up to 577, as we can see on the right-hand side as well, which means I'm up 18% compared to, so just a few trades, I'm already noticeably having okay gains just within these just small flickering back and forth along the way. Currently, it's not that many people trading, so there's a 577 bid. That's what you would get if you sell on the market. 583 is the ask, and I got a bid or ask order just a little bit above it at around 590. I had about two choices. One, do I take the current price in the area and what's the most realistic highest price I can get, which is in the 590s, or do I go much over 600? And I bought at 500, so I'm gonna sell at the 590, and then of course if it goes, I'll be looking to put a buy order probably back down near this low again, and then if it breaks this level of resistance at 590ish or so, then I'm going to be looking to say, wait, I mean, I'm happy selling there because I know I can go very easily go to like 600-700, and then even beyond that because I can get some good sellers. I mean, I can go for like 1200 as a sell order, or I can go for one maybe try to sell it around maybe 850, then again at 1200, and just play that mathematical game really well. But if I want to do an advanced strategy, instead of just selling a little bit here, I would sell a lot more. Instead of going for like 20% moves, going from 600 to like 1150, that's like almost 100%. Yet I would be, if I played the strategy where everything's worth the same amount and you get 100% gain, that's selling about half of what you own. And then if it goes back nicely to like say down in here, you'd be making a nice buy at 800. If you could do stuff like that, sell for 50% up, buy back 30% down, sell 40% up, 20% down, 80% up, 40% down, and those types of high movements, you're going to be really doing well in overperforming the base market. But for now, I wouldn't be surprised if it does get going. And let's take a look at the next market. We'll take a look at PIVX. And I'll start very long term within the monthly chart. And the improper log scale does incorrect justification for such. But along the way, after the support gave in, it's had a few periods, while the last four just hanging in there from the 4 consecutive down moves. And thus, if it's ready to have a decent sized rally like it's done so many times, you have decent moves down, decent moves up, I'm going to continue to expect the same thing to continue. Is there any evidence that it's going to be happening any time within this current level? Weekly term time frame, reversal of trend, stage 1, band flatten out. Well, it's done that. Stage 2, establish resistance, and these levels here are nowhere near high enough. So therefore, for resistance to be established, I need to see this go 29.30. It pretty much has to get close to a double, at least like an 80% move from where we stand, around the high 20s, for me to say that's high enough for an established resistance point. And then that would be enough to help make the 18 average start to go higher. So charts have been beaten down through a lot this year. So a lot of the weekly time frames for a lot of these coins are going to be in negative/neutral markets. But what happens after a down market and it's not counting sideways, it's an up. It's just, will the up move start from this area or from a much lower one when it starts to come into play? Within the daily time frame today, it's made another statement. The last time it did so, it failed and it came back down to previous low. For the statement before was in here. Now, when you come back down, you correct. Here's a spot where it got up to the 18 average in here, the highs that is, but it immediately rejected the next day, and we can see following that it showed weakness amongst the 18 average of lows, which then followed with the leg lower to previous low. And something of note within markets, whenever you see something like this, it's either upside or downside, you can use the polarity reverse for up moves. You had this key support, you really spent no time in here, or you spent very little, if hardly any at all, but you did make it to this point. And when it's a decent sized rally back to this point in here, if it breaks down from this, then it's not an uncommon situation, which was the case here, for it to come back down to previous low and congest within that area for quite some time, as we can see is the case in here. And well, Bitcoin was the exact same thing with 6,000. When Bitcoin went to 6,000, it pulled up really fast, and then later it congested within that area. So then you have a now what situation question mark when you get there. Are we going to, after this support, have a decent break higher or lower? Well, the evidence is now pointing higher. It's at least made that statement again, because If it's able to be able to get above this, correct a rally successfully, and start to maintain moves higher, that's when you can start to talk about making several patterns of higher highs and higher lows, or at least some really good ones where you might be talking about making multiple X gains moving forward. When we take, and overall, when you look at these over moves as a trader, and you can think about profitability, you got this one in here, which is an obvious buy spot. And if you buy here, you're able to sell within this congestion range. And of course, if you're playing for much better volatility, you have this situation, comes back to the band. And then another one, comes back to the band. Another one, entry back, and it would eventually top. Then this low here, this one, comes back to this area. And now we'll see if we can draw any more circles above this point. Within, of course, buy low, sell high. And amongst the Binance exchange, it had a really, really interesting low period. And I'm now more motivated on the site to make sure my really deep buy orders are in within this market. With that being said, however, I wouldn't have been able to really get in on this one because, well, I would normally did, and I did, of course. But if I'm waiting for a buy order on this day, I probably would have been waiting for something around 14 or whatever, 100. So I would have bought somewhere in here. But what I like to do is put maybe a nice, at this time I would have put in for one for maybe 200. So that's why I know I wouldn't have got it. But these moves can happen at any time, and only price pays. Those who bought down here, well, congratulations, you got a good deal amongst the trade. So then, shorten this time frame out. 4 hour, that's just actually, this is the one that I really want to focus on, the move going on today. So you have this resistance break, fast move higher. And when I see something like this, you see the large size periods, and you're only seeing 4 good size periods, the big rally, the red candle down after it, a just pause period, congesting the big move and the small correction, and then a good green candle up, another pause correction, just digesting the previous gain, and now it's going higher within this 5 minutes left in the hour, so pretty much the end of the period, with another good green candle. So the volatility from this point and the volume is most certainly going a lot higher. So now you got the availability to trade this on a market and exchange like this at a much shorter term time frame. And oftentimes I want to see how that's working out. Okay, 15 minutes really gives me a good story. As we got this level of resistance at around 1737 after it had good support in here, breaking out very nicely right now. 5 minutes showing a lot of these nice little moves. And look at the size and the pictures of these candles pre and post this green period at 5:35 a.m. Eastern time this morning. You can see they're a lot bigger, and it's going to go back to this again, but this play has got to go through. So within such an event, here's this level of resistance area which has now been taken out. So there's a good chance we might be in the midst of another leg higher. Whether it's going to go up from here or correct, and it's shorter term showing correction, I never can tell. But I realize if it's just going to show me a red candle like this, maybe follow through with a couple more, then I'm looking at the 18 average as support, but this big key level. And it's not uncommon that you have a nice leg higher. 18 has a higher rate of ascent, good rate of ascent here, slow rate of ascent here, higher now, that because of the higher point, this 18 is going to coincide with this line. And it's either going to say, okay, the statement here from 10:40 a.m. to now is that it's ready for a nice little leg higher, and it's either going to do so, do what it needs to correct, and then just in time and within such, you're talking within the next many minutes or hour, that it could have maybe another decent leg up. And of course, if it's failed breakout, fast move lower, well, that's just going to be the case within such. But I'm liking how this thing is moving right now, and within the statement on the daily term time frame, I'm just going to wait and see how things go, having my orders ready to go. Let's move on to the next one. That is Komodo. And before I go there, I want to show my order or the playlist on here, whatever you want to call this, of the codes. On Bittrex, Komodo is 17 and 2/3, and on Binance it's 18 and 1/5. Differential about 50 plus basis points, or close to 3%. It's getting close to the point where I'm considering I want to arbitrage this. On Bittrex, got a nice little pattern in here. I like how this has been playing on the daily within the 18 average, chopping up back and forth. Just a beautiful pattern, really. And yet on Binance, it's barely breaking out above. What do we see on the single hour? Oh, it's moving here. Not as much here. So it's a new play. So therefore, if the spread can get any bigger, and quite frankly it is, so I'm going to have to pause the tape. And as we move on, we can see that this thing is just breaking out really, really nicely. And unfortunately, during this 1 minute time when I was gone, I had to take a sale at 1840 change here. And I was really hoping to get the 1850.60, but I was buying. And then on the other side, I had to pay a little bit more than I wanted to, as I was trying to get in at the 17, like down in here, and I had to spend up here. But it's a small gain. I'm going to have to move some funds back and forth here and there from this point on, but that's not going to be a problem, of course. And wait to see how this thing settles in, because before I do a transfer, I'm just going to wait to see if there's going to be able to, if I can just reverse the arbitrage later on. And I can still look for more if this thing goes higher again. I got one more arbitrage bet left, but the wallets are back online, so I can be able to transfer funds back and forth if there happens to be a good situation. But overall, this thing looks like it's ready to have a decent size a gain as we move forward. We can see here again just this beautiful movements in December since this resistance establishment at around the exact area it's at now, around 1850 up to about 19 and a quarter. That if this thing gets above, I'm going to be looking for this thing to go in the 22s relatively soon, and then on the weekly time frame, maybe be able to do stage number 2 after band flatten out, which is establishing resistance. And for this, I think I need at least around 25 to 26. And I would even like to see closer to 30 for a resistance establishment if such is going to come into play. Let's take a look next at Ethereum Classic, ETC. This will be the final one for this morning, or this particular video. I like how the band has been flattening out. We had the resistance establishment yesterday. We take a look at this on the 4-hour term. This is I like the view of this chart. We will draw one of those nice little horizontal rays where the price is now. I guess I don't even need one. That red line does its justification. It's proximate area. So it had yesterday this little play in here. 18 average is now newly rising and finding support there as we speak. That if I can see some further momentum going higher, that well, we can be looking for stage number 2 here, which is resistance established. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.